Week 19 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters falling down the rankings this week. The first guy's Mike Moustakas of the Cincinnati Reds. So this Cincinnati Red team, they've been playing good baseball this season, and their hitting's been one of the better hitting teams in the National League. But Mike Moustakas, he just hasn't been part of it right now over the last couple weeks since this team's gotten red hot here. And I know he came off injury 2 weeks ago, is Moustakas, and it might take him time to get things going. But on the season for him, 4 home runs, 15 RBIs, 17 runs scored, 119 at-bats only, a 210 average and a 317 on base. But the last couple weeks since he returned from the long injury, that cost him 2 or 3 months. No home runs, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored, a 125 batting average, and a 263 on base. So right here, he's struggling mightily as Moustakas. And right now, he's pretty much a droppable player in most fantasy leagues, unless he turns things around. He's been dropped in 7% of fantasy leagues over the last week here. He's only owned in half fantasy leagues at 50, so the last few games here for Moustakas: August 13th at Philly 0 for 3, August 14th at Philly 0 for 1, August 15th at Philly 0 for 4, August 17th versus the Cubs 0 for 3, August 18th versus the Cubs 0 for 4, and August 19th versus the Marlins 0 for 3. So right here, Moustakas, he hasn't got a hit now in 7 games here, so he's definitely struggling, and he's frustrating to own, and that's why a lot of owners already have gone out there and dropped him in their leagues, and he's definitely a hitter for one. I think he could turn it around, but it's getting harder and harder to have faith in him this season. The next hitter falling is JT Realmuto of the Philadelphia Phillies. So Realmuto got the monster contract in the offseason to re-sign with the Phillies, and it's been a little bit of an underwhelming year in my opinion here for Realmuto. 13 home runs, 53 RBIs, 7 stolen bases, 48 runs scored, a 259 average, and a 344 on base in the last couple weeks for him. He's been one of the worst hitters in fantasy baseball. 1 home and 2 RBIs, 3 runs scored, a 135 average, and a 200 on base. So right there, those numbers are awful, obviously. And this Philadelphia Philly team, they've been struggling now of late, and I think JT Realmuto's been the problem. They've been losing 4 in a row, and right now it looks like the Atlanta Braves might run away with this division. But Realmuto, who was drafted in the 3rd or 4th round of most fantasy drafts coming into the season, he just hasn't lived up to it, and right now he's fallen with the struggles over the last couple days. August 13th versus Cincinnati, 1 for 4. August 14th versus Cincy, 1 for 3 with a run and an RBI. August 15th versus Cincy, 1 for 4 with a run. August 17th at Arizona, 0 for 4. August 18th at Arizona, 0 for 3. And August 19th at Arizona, 0 for 4. So though he's really struggling here, and now he's in an 0 for 11 slump in the last 3 games. So hopefully he could turn things around and get things going in the next series at San Diego. But he's definitely a hitter falling this week. The next hitter falling is Tommy Pham of the San Diego Padres. So Pham, he got off to a big start in the first few months of the season, but now he really cooled off, and his numbers are pretty mediocre to poor on the season. 13 home runs, 39 RBIs, 13 stolen bases, 66 runs scored, a 243 average, and a 349 on base. But the last couple weeks here, Pham's hit rock bottom: 1 home run, 2 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a 163 average, and a 250 on base. So right here, those numbers aren't productive, and he's just not getting the job done right now here for the San Diego team. And they were another team in a little bit of a tailspin, losing 3 in a row at the Colorado Rockies. So they got to get back on track, and they need Tommy Pham, obviously, who's one of their better hitters, to get going. But right now, fantasy owners, they're getting fed up with Pham as well, dropping him in 4% of fantasy leagues this week. So the last few games for him: August 13th at Arizona, 1 for 5. August 14th at Arizona, 0 for 1. August 15th at Arizona, 1 for 5. August 16th at the Rockies, 0 for 1. August 17th at the Rockies, 1 for 4 with a homer and an RBI. And August 18th, he only pinched hit at the Rockies, 0 for 1. So right here, he's not getting the job done, is Tommy Pham. And San Diego and fantasy owners need him to get going here before it's too late in the season. But I think Pham could turn it around. He still can steal bases and score runs, which helps your fantasy team, obviously. But everything else is something he's not doing. So right now, he's a hitter definitely falling this week. The next hitter falling this week is Dom Smith of the New York Mets. So this New York Mets team as a whole, they just cannot hit the baseball. And I've been saying this all season. Guys like Dom Smith, Jeff McNeil, Michael Conforto, and J.D. Davis, and James McCann, they all struggling. They were all not hitting the ball. And Dom Smith last season had a great, 2-month season that it was for. But his numbers are way better last year than this year. This year, 11 home runs, 52 RBIs, 39 runs scored, a 247 average, and a 307 on base, where last season, in 200 less at-bats, had 10 homers, 42 RBIs with a 316 average and a 377 on base. So the New York Mets and fantasy owners coming into the season had high hopes here for Dom Smith, but he's been pretty bad, and he's definitely been a bust as well here for fantasy baseball in the last couple weeks for him. No homers, 4 RBIs, 2 runs scored, a 163 average, and a 178 on base. So right here, he's not getting the job. The Mets, they're not getting the job done. They're not scoring runs. They're not driving in runs. And Dom Smith's been a big problem because of that too for this team. In big situations, getting out, not moving runners over, and just not hitting the baseball well. So right here, Dom Smith's been dropped in 4% of fantasy leagues, and he's a hitter definitely falling this week. The last few games for him, August 13th versus the Dodgers, 1 for 3 with a run and a rib. August 14th versus the Dodgers, 1 for 4. August 15th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 4. August 16th at the Giants, 0 for 4 with an RBI. August 17th at the Giants, 1 for 1. August 18th at the Giants, 0 for 5 with a run. And August 19th at the Dodgers, 0 for 4. So right here, Dom Smith, he just can't get out of his own way right now with only 1 hit in his last 4 games. And he's in a mighty slump. And he's a player I definitely wouldn't wait on to turn things around. And the 5th and final hitter for this week's Austin Meadows of the Tampa Bay Rays. So Austin Meadows, I mentioned early in the week, is a buy low candidate, and hit is to buy low. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. And on the season here for Meadows, 21 homers, 83 RBIs, very solid with the home runs and the RBIs, obviously, which is right up there amongst the league leaders. 65 runs scored, a 232 average, a 324 on base. But the last couple weeks here for Meadows, he's been non-existent for fantasy owners. 1 homer, still has 7 RBIs somehow, 4 runs, a dreadful 135 batting average, and a 283 on base. So right now, he's just in a big slump, is Meadows. But he's still driving in runs as well, even though he's barely hitting the baseball. So the last few games for Meadows, August 12th in Boston, 0 for 5. August 14th in Minnesota, 0 for 3. August 15th in Minnesota, 0 for 3 with a run. August 16th versus Baltimore, 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs. August 18th versus Baltimore, 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs. And August 19th versus Baltimore, 0 for 2 with 2 RBIs. So right here, he's still producing RBIs, but everything else, he's just not getting done. And he's falling this week, so that's a few hitters falling down the rankings here in Week 19 of the fantasy baseball season.